Late-night television erupted into chaos last night as Elon Musk and Jimmy Kimmel clashed in a brutal on-air confrontation. What began as a routine interview spiraled into accusations of transphobia, racism, and a fiery takedown of woke culture. That left the host speechless. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button for more explosive stories like this. It was meant to be another late-night interview with the world's most talked-about tech billionaire. Elon Musk, visionary, provocateur, and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, sat across from Jimmy Kimmel under the warm lights of Jimmy Kimmel Live, wearing his trademark half-smirk and dark jacket. The atmosphere was light at first, the crowd's energy, a blend of curiosity and cautious admiration. Musk rarely appeared on late-night talk shows anymore, and there was a buzz in the air that this episode might be different. And it was. Kimmel began with the usual pleasantries, comments about electric, trucks, satellites, and X, formerly Twitter. But there was an edge to his tone, the kind of edge that hints at a loaded chamber waiting for the right moment to unload. Musk was cordial, answering with precision, sometimes dry wit, sometimes casual indifference, as if aware that this wasn't just a chat. It was a setup. And then the pivot came. "So Elon," Kimmel said, suddenly leaning forward with the energy of a man ready to pounce, "there's been a lot of talk online about your stance on social issues, specifically regarding your child's transition. Now I'm just going to ask you straight. Do you consider yourself transphobic?" The room fell into an audible silence. Musk's brow twitched, not out of surprise, but irritation. Kimmel continued, eyes locked, the cadence of his voice changing from playful host to moral prosecutor. "Because it's out there that your own daughter, excuse me, your child, has chosen to live her truth, and instead of supporting her, you cut her off. She changed her name, disowned you, and the only thing people can find from you is cold indifference. And when people dig deeper, they find it's not just transphobia. It's tied to some really old, ugly ideologies, racism, control. Some people say you see identity as a threat to your status, your power." "Care to respond?" the audience murmured, unsure whether to cheer or gasp. Elon didn't flinch. He sat, back, arms folded, the camera capturing a glint of steel in his eyes. "My relationship with my child is private," Musk replied, voice low, calculated. "But since you've chosen to weaponize it for ratings, let's unpack this publicly." Kimmel blinked. This wasn't the reaction he expected. "You say I'm transphobic because I disagree with the idea that a 16-year-old under the influence of digital cults should be irreversibly altered without fully understanding the consequences. That makes me a bigot?" The audience quieted further. Some leaned in. The tension was sharp now, electrified. "That's not what I said," Kimmel began, but Musk cut in. "You suggested it. And you wrapped it in the false virtue of progress, but what you're doing is ideological blackmail. You've decided that if someone resists the latest iteration of whatever belief system the internet spits out, they're not just wrong, they're evil." Kimmel looked uncomfortable but stood his ground. "So it's all a conspiracy then?" he scoffed. "Your daughter is just brainwashed? There's no real identity there? Isn't that just your way of ignoring the pain she's going through? Pain caused by you?" The jab was sharp. Musk's expression darkened, but he didn't snap. "Do you know what causes pain?" Musk said slowly, his voice hardening. "It's people like you exploiting real emotional struggles for performative outrage. My daughter is a human being, not your anecdote. And for you to sit there, hiding behind late-night sarcasm and moral theatrics while projecting your own ignorance onto my life, frankly, it's disgusting." The audience was divided, some stunned into silence, others letting out hushed dams and gasps. It was unlike anything they'd seen on the show. Kimmel leaned forward again, eyes narrowing, pushing further. "But Elon, you've posted online about woke mind viruses. about how wokeness is a threat. That's not private. That's, public. And to many, it's code for anti-progress, for punching down. How do you square that with being a father to a trans daughter? Or is this just some long game of deflection for your own biases? A beat passed. Elon's face showed nothing, but the cameras caught the tightening of his jaw, the brief blink that hinted at the flicker of something deeper, something dangerous. "This is the problem with people like you," Musk said quietly. "You pretend to defend progress, but you've made it a religion. And you're the inquisitor. You're not looking for truth. You're hunting heresy." The words hung in the air. The room chilled. Kimmel paused, visibly thrown off his rhythm. "What are you even talking about now?" Kimmel said, trying to laugh it off. "Come on, we're just asking questions." Musk leaned forward for the first time, the tension now flipping. "No, you're not. You're performing a ritual," he said. "The moment anyone deviates from your script, you label them transphobe, racist, misogynist. It's lazy. It's authoritarian. And frankly, it's dangerous. You think you're the resistance, but you're the enforcer of conformity." The words hit like a slap. The crowd shifted again. No cheering, no laughter, just uneasy energy. Kimmel opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, Musk added, "You want to talk about racism? You host a show built on making fun of people for clout, built on decades of punching down. But because you have rainbow graphics and tweet the right things, you get a pass?" Kimmel's face hardened. His smile was gone. The conversation was no longer salvageable. The tone was pure confrontation. And then, just when it felt like it might boil over, Jimmy Kimmel leaned back in his chair and looked off stage. "We're gonna take a break," he said tersely. "But when we come back, we'll have a musical. Performance by— Actually, no. You know what? This interview is over." Gasps echoed again, louder this time. Musk didn't move. Kimmel turned back to him, jaw clenched. "Elon, thank you for being here. You can go now." But Musk didn't stand. Not yet. He had more to say. Elon Musk didn't flinch, didn't rise, didn't even blink. The camera remained locked on him, catching the weight in his eyes. The poised stillness of someone used to boardrooms where billions were decided with a glance. Kimmel had tried to end the interview, but this wasn't his stage anymore. Not tonight. "Are you scared of what I'm saying?" Musk said calmly. Not to Kimmel, but to the audience. "Or are you scared that I might be right?" The crowd was dead silent now. Even the studio crew seemed frozen in place. Musk leaned forward just slightly, enough to close the space between confrontation and control. "Because here's the truth you don't want to hear. Your entire reality, your beliefs, your outrage, your certainty. It's not your own. It's been engineered, fed to you by a system that thrives on binary thinking. Agree or be destroyed. Affirm or be erased. There is no room for questions anymore. And you, Jimmy, you're not the exception. You're the mascot." Kimmel opened his mouth to reply but paused, visibly wrestling with the fact that the audience wasn't reacting the way he'd expected. They weren't laughing. They weren't clapping. They were just watching, absorbing. "You think you're standing up for marginalized people," Musk continued, his voice steady. "But what you're really doing is turning their pain into ammunition for your brand. You pick a target, you frame the narrative, and then you perform outrage like it's a virtue." Kimmel tried to retake the reins. "Elon, come on. This is a talk show, not a TED Talk." "No," Musk said, his voice louder now. "This is exactly the problem. When someone challenges the orthodoxy, when someone refuses to play the role you've written for them, it becomes unacceptable. You don't want a conversation. You want a confession. And if you don't get it, you cancel them." Kimmel threw his cue cards onto the desk and leaned forward. "You're spinning this like some kind of noble stand," he said, frustration bleeding through the cracks of his rehearsed calm. But the truth is, you're just a billionaire who's mad the world doesn't worship him anymore. You used to be a hero, now you're a meme. And maybe that's what really hurts." That line finally got a response from the crowd. A few uneasy chuckles, the sound of people unsure whether they were allowed to laugh. But Musk wasn't fazed. "You think I care about being liked?" he shot back. "If I wanted applause, I'd tell you what you wanted to hear. I'd paint my profile picture with flags. I'd use all the right hashtags. I'd say, 'Love is love,' and smile for the camera. But I'm not here to placate a mob. I'm here to build the future. You want slogans? I want rockets. You want likes? I want Mars." Kimmel stared at him, stunned by the sheer audacity of it. And something in Musk's tone shifted, just slightly, but enough that the air in the room tightened. "You brought up my daughter," Musk said, the words slower now. "So let me say something that you will never understand, Jimmy. Being a parent means making decisions that aren't always popular. It means protecting your child, even from ideas that might harm them. You think it's compassionate to let a teenager completely redefine themselves based on the whims of online echo chambers and cultural fads? I don't. That's not hate. That's not fear. That's being a father." Kimmel looked down at his desk for a moment, maybe to regroup, maybe just to break eye contact. But Musk wasn't done. "You talk about racism," he said, voice sharpening again. "Let me tell you what real racism looks like. It's assuming every individual must conform to your ideological purity test or be labeled something vile. It's pretending you speak for every marginalized group when in reality you use them as a shield to silence people. That's not justice. That's authoritarianism wrapped in a rainbow flag." Now the crowd was clearly uneasy. A few clapped, awkward and scattered. Others crossed their arms or looked at their phones. The energy in the room had mutated. It was no longer a live audience. It was a jury, caught between two opposing philosophies. Kimmel straightened up again, trying to salvage the narrative. "So now you're the victim?" he said, sarcasm laced with disbelief. "The richest man in the world, bullied by the big bad woke mob?" Musk smiled for the first time. But it wasn't amused. It was sharp. "No, I'm not a victim. I'm a warning." The silence that followed hit like a wave. The phrase lingered in the air, heavy and cryptic. "I built companies that changed the world," Musk said, rising finally from his chair. "While you spent the last 20 years reading punchlines off cue cards. You want to lecture me about morality? You sell advertisements between jokes about climate change and celebrity divorces. You're not a moral authority. You're a salesman with a laugh track." Kimmel stood too, his voice rising. "That's enough." But Musk kept going. "No, what's enough is this charade. This fake civility where you pretend to be open-minded while only accepting one answer. This entire format, this whole show, it's obsolete. Just like your narrative." Security had begun moving toward the stage, subtly at first, but everyone could feel the tension shift. Musk looked toward the audience one last time. "You can be manipulated into thinking you're on the right side of history," he said. "But ask yourself, are you free to question what you're being told? Or are you afraid to speak?" He turned to Kimmel, now visibly fuming, his jaw tight. "You're not offended because I'm wrong," Musk added. "You're offended because I said it out loud," Kimmel snapped. "All right, that's it. I said it earlier and I meant it. This interview is over. Get off my stage." Musk gave him one final look, a mixture of pity and disdain. "This was never your stage," he said quietly. "It just had your name on it." With that, Elon Musk turned, walked past the cameras, past the stunned faces in the crowd, and off the set. The audience remained in stunned silence, caught between what they'd just witnessed and what it meant. And Jimmy Kimmel? He stood there, hands gripping the edge of his desk, unsure whether he'd just won or lost. The cameras kept rolling, the studio lights buzzing faintly overhead, catching the taut lines in his face. The control room was radio silent, waiting, on a cue that wasn't coming. The audience, usually a sea of laughter and applause, had turned into a collection of frozen expressions, some dazed, some disturbed, others quietly reflecting on the verbal war they'd just witnessed. For the first time in a long time, Kimmel didn't know what to say. One of the producers leaned in from the side of the stage, whispering, "We can cut to commercial, Jimmy. Just give the signal." But he didn't. Instead, Kimmel slowly lowered himself back into the chair, exhaling like a man coming down from altitude. A sip of water did nothing to cool the heat in his chest. He glanced off stage where Elon Musk had exited, the dark curtain still slightly swaying in his wake. The billionaire's words still echoed in the room, not because of their volume but their clarity. He had come prepared, unapologetic, armed not with charm or quips, but a dangerous, calculated precision. And Kimmel knew it. The cameras kept rolling. "Well," he muttered into the mic, attempting to salvage something, anything. "That was certainly different." A few chuckles from the audience, nervous, obligatory, rippled out. But Kimmel didn't lean into them. He stared down at his cue cards, scribbled questions about self-driving tech and Mars, and realized how absurd they looked now. Out of place. Pointless. "I guess we just saw what happens when a guest doesn't want to play along," he added, trying to reframe, but his voice lacked the usual punch. "And I'll be honest, I don't think that was an interview. That was a manifesto. Still, no applause. Still no cheers. Just one cough somewhere in the back row, and the mechanical whir of the stage lights above. There was something unusual in the air now. An unease not just with the conflict that had played out, but the deeper realization that it hadn't followed the usual script. Musk hadn't come to be adored or even tolerated. He came to challenge the narrative. And while Kimmel had fired first, it had become painfully clear that he'd been unprepared for the retaliation. Backstage, Elon Musk stood before a bank of monitors watching the live feed continue. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't gloating. He simply stood, arms crossed, as if confirming that the outcome had played out exactly as he'd foreseen. He exchanged no words with producers. There was no fanfare. He didn't demand control of the clip. He didn't bark for edits. He just let the truth stand. For once, the world would have to wrestle with what had actually been said. Back on stage, Kimmel rubbed his hands together, trying to find his rhythm again. "Look, I know this show's supposed to be fun," he said, his tone softer now, more subdued. "We poke fun at politics, we do bits, we roll with the weirdness. But I never expected that." He glanced up at the audience again. "Maybe we all just saw something important. Or maybe we saw a man too full of himself to care how his words hurt other people." A smattering of applause broke out this time. Supportive, but not overwhelming. It sounded hollow. Even Kimmel heard it. He cleared his throat, forcing a smirk. "All right, well, coming up next we have, He paused again, eyes darting to the prompter. "The band. They're great. You'll love them. Stay tuned." But the flow was broken. The air never returned to the room. And when the show cut to black, the internet exploded. Clips of the confrontation were already racing across social media platforms. Twitter, or X, depending on who you asked, lit up in all directions. Hashtags like Musk vs. Kimmel, Woke Showdown, and This Was Not Late Night were trending within the hour. No one agreed on what they'd just seen, but no one could deny it mattered. Some viewers called Elon Musk's speech dangerous, inflammatory, even delusional. Others hailed it as a moment of rare truth in a media landscape addicted to safe applause and ideological comfort. The debate spread like wildfire. News outlets scrambled to repackage the exchange, spinning narratives left and right. Pundits jumped on air. Think pieces were being drafted before midnight, but there was no agreed-upon takeaway. That was the power of what had happened. It wasn't the kind of confrontation that offered a clean hero or a clear villain. It was messier, more human, more uncomfortable. And that's what made it linger. Behind closed doors at ABC, producers were already panicking. Legal teams whispered about liability. PR reps drafted statements in case the network needed to distance itself from something, though what exactly that something was remained unclear. Meanwhile, Elon Musk left the building quietly. No swarm of cameras, no entourage, just a few staffers who had watched the entire interview with wide eyes and mouths half open. Some avoided eye contact. Others gave him small nods of recognition. Respect? Maybe. Maybe fear. But definitely not indifference. He didn't speak to them. He didn't need to. As he climbed into the waiting car and shut the door behind him, a young production assistant, barely 20, clipboard in hand, stood frozen just outside the glass. She had one question stuck in her throat, something she'd been wanting to ask the moment he walked onto the stage. She didn't ask it. The car pulled away. Back in the studio, Kimmel sat in his empty chair long after the credits rolled. His team had filtered out, some offering half-hearted reassurances, others pretending not to notice the shift in energy. The desk in front of him was bare now. Just a microphone and the weight of what had transpired. It had started as another segment, another celebrity appearance. But it ended as a cultural reckoning. A mirror, a fault line. And Jimmy Kimmel was left sitting in its aftermath, not with victory or defeat, but with the quiet, bitter knowledge that something had changed. Not just for his show, not just for Elon Musk, but for everyone. Because sometimes, when the script falls apart, you find out what people really believe. And in that moment, truth is no longer something you laugh at between commercial breaks. It becomes the only thing left standing.